Hey guys, welcome to episode 32 of Biomassed. Appreciate everybody being here. We've got a few folks on the live stream, and as usual, we'll be waiting for a whole lot of you to be downloading this on iTunes this week. We are back on our normal time, as many of you can tell, and we've got quite a bit to talk about. We always say that, and we always say it's interesting and all that good stuff, but we really do. There's a big patch coming out this week, and we've got quite a few. Whoa, we're not on the live stream yet. You're killing me, Zell.
No, we're not streaming.
Oh, well,
Period.
that's awesome. So we're not going to edit this out so you guys can see exactly how bad my show management skills are. I've only got it up to like level 2. It's okay. But I am saving some boosters for that. So as I was saying before, Zill corrected me, which for the record is probably the only time he's going to get anything right in the show, but we'll just mark that one up. We do have quite a few guests on tonight, so we're going to get right into it. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that we have a sponsor. I don't know if anybody knows this. The Limited Off-World Logistics League, or the LOL. It's a league of dedicated lodges, and as we like to say, we're here to make sure you don't suck. So with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and get into the intros. Iron Wolf Saber.
Hello, this is CPM1 Iron Wolf Saber, and I'm currently a CPM novelist this week.
Okay. Pokey.
I'm Pokey Draven from OSG Planetary Operations and co-host here on Biomassed.
And SMB.
Sir Manboy here, one of the directors over at Molan Labe, member of CPM1, and a colonel according to the loyalty system. So, you can call me colonel if you like.
You can call me brigadier, but that's okay. Okay, and Sriza.
I'm Srizel, CPM1, and a leader in the Top Men Alliance and a co-host here on the show.
Awesome. And Rattati?
Yes, I am CCP Rattati, and I'm the head of Dust 514. I guess we'd call it that.
I think you outrank us all. That's pretty good, brother.
Also a colonel.
Very well then. And I'm Jason Larison. I'm a member of OSG Planetary Operations on the Dust side, and I fly with Agony Unleashed on the Eve side. And again, as you guys have all noticed, we have CCP Rattati with us. We really appreciate you coming on the show. It's one of those things where I think the Dust community, if there's ever a group of gamers that want information, it's folks that play CCP games, I think, and they are hungry for information. But what they really like is the dialogue that the devs from CCP Shanghai and CCP Iceland, this is like that dialogue that you guys generally establish with your player community is clearly hands down one of the best in the gaming industry, and we really appreciate you coming on. So with that, what we'd like to do is kind of jump right into it. We've got a pretty big patch coming out this week, and what we'd kind of like to do is talk a little bit about some of the features going on in that patch this week. And I'd like to turn this over to CCP Rattati for just a minute or two and kind of let us know what are some of the big highlights coming out in patch 1.10.
Yep, happy to do that. So 1.10 is coming out. Not everyone was expecting that, actually. We call it the anti-cash grab patch in-house. Our headline features are, of course, daily missions that we are kind of running as a new player experience as well. We're doing our best to teach players through doing, not by reading. And that's we were looking really forward to seeing what happens with our new players. It's of course obviously also for the veterans. People have been asking for more content. Give me a special reason to log in today or something. So there'll be prizes or rewards for completing missions, and a special mission, special reward for completing all of the daily missions. That's kind of the headline feature. It took us the brunt of the work to get that in. We should have had that in probably for launch or something, but live you learn. The second main feature is, I'd call it just user experience, more veteran stuff in game, to spice up the actual gameplay. These PC and many of the battles have become quite kind of stale in a sense. Not much has changed in tactics in the last 6 to 9 months, I guess. So we're spicing that up with orbital strikes, and I think that's going to be great. It's the we call it play counterplay method or design that we don't want to kind of just go in as a dev and fix a situation. We'd rather that the player have the tools or the weapons to fix that situation yourself. So we talked about uplink spam, high rooftops, etc. And I think we'll be able to kind of see what happens with that and give the players the tools to fight uplink spam. You know, we had drop ships doing the brunt of the work, but now we can kind of jump in and fix it yourself. We actually created a tiny flux strike. If you played Faction Warfare or PC, you've known that the EMP orbital strike is quite big, but the new smaller, or we'll call it minor flux strike, is meant for basically everyone. It's a tiny radius. It's one or two shots of compared to 24 on the other one, and it's meant to not only be that counter tool, but it's also meant for new players and intermediate players to actually experience that gameplay. You can't solo Warbarge strike for about 5,000K unless you're like a super veteran. But 300 war points, you'll get that notification. You'll ask yourself, what is it? You'll try it out. You'll probably die while you're figuring it out. But later you'll be able to kind of get that feeling of raw power, something shooting from outer space into this combat situation based on your advice, basically.
Blueberry
So
lightning. I love it.
I think it's gonna be fun, and we're gonna have to tune it probably. The prices and the radii, and etc. But I think it's the right thing to do, and it's gonna be a fun thing to experience.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah. Questions or kind of comments on that? It's a monologue.
Actually, I did have a couple of quick questions, if you don't mind.
Go.
Let's see. The first one I think is the missions that you mentioned. I think you kind of indicated that was one of your sort of the marquee features for this patch. Can you describe like what some of those missions would be like? What would a player see, for example, as a mission of the day?
So we kind of went back to the basics and also tried to create a foundation for tracking all kinds of, or most things that you do in a game, to kind of prepare for more complex events, and also feedback or live feedback on events that has been missing for our events since launch. You basically, your event tracker is a pencil and a piece of paper on your sofa. So that said, the missions, we've created probably 30 missions, 30, 40 missions. It's easy to do, to make the missions. We made sure that they're all kind of server side, so we can just jump in and add more. We tried to take most of the basically current metrics, or what do you call it? Items that the server tracks. So a case is, get 500 war points, get 6 kills, get drop, spawn on uplinks, die, walk, run, assist kills from vehicle, kills in vehicle. Most of these things are available. We don't have the kind of second layer down, which is for the next iteration would be to kills in scout, killing scouts in heavy, like that kind of combination. We don't have that yet. Or kills with a specific weapon, and then you can go down to killing scouts with sniper rifles. So we're not there yet, but that's where we're heading. We currently have the first layer down and working.
Okay, no, I mean that sounds pretty good actually. It's very reminiscent of some of the events we had a long time ago, like some of the Mordu's events, things like that, whereas hack so many points, blow up so many installations, that kind of thing. So it was really more than about just securing kills, that kind of thing. It was a little bit wider brush of activities in the game. So I think that's actually a pretty neat thing, and and as you develop more into it, or it gets a little bit more complex with what you can add, you can probably have some pretty good fun with it, actually. Like 1,000 extra war points for heavy kills with a Nova knife. Something mildly humorous, but pretty challenging like that. I mean, there's a lot of things that you could do with that kind of system. And like you said, it's a good case of maybe one of those things that probably should have been brought into the game much earlier in its life cycle. but the fact that you're adding it, I think, is a huge positive. So, anything else on the missions? Or I mean, that's a pretty good rundown. I'm just curious if there's anything else you had.
No, but we do have strengths of a mission. So there'll be a easy, medium, or hard variety of each mission. So giving more rewards based on the strength. So we intended it to for a new player. It's going to be easy to rack up 5 or 6 missions probably for a veteran, but new players, and there's a kind of we made sure that we tried to give it a fun name, but we also tried to give it a kind of rather detailed explanation in lieu of a tutorial. I don't like the tutorial right now. It's too kind of go do this, do this, do this. These missions will kind of teach you what to do in game. So the hacker objective is hack 3 objectives. There's another called hack secondary objectives, etc. And it has a description. Go hack these things because they are vital to the enemy, or etc. So it's going to give you also a kind of insight into the game before you start playing.
Okay. No, I mean, that sounds like I said, I think you're laying the groundwork for a really cool system right now. And I like I said, I kind of dig it. Just a quick note on the Flex War Barge strikes that you're going to offer out. Just to be clear, it's 300 war points is the entry for that initial minor flex strike, and then you can obviously just save that and either drop multiples of those or save it up for a an actual lethal war barge strike. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You can save up, and that's a new feature. So you basically get you're earning war points, and you have a lot of war points, and you bring up the off-map support. You'll see all the available strikes, and you spend your war points on those. So you can either do 10 of 300, 1 of 3,000. You're up to you.
Oh, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think we got it. You said it was a pretty small radius. What is it?
In the design, it was supposed to be around an HAV or a.
Okay.
It's only meant to be a, what do you call it? It's only meant to interrupt operations, not like totally destroy them.
No, I think that's a good plan though. Like a very small focus strike.
I actually have a quick question about the strikes. So currently, right now, once you reach the threshold for an orbital, only the squad leader can drop the orbital. So with these new strikes, will anyone be able to drop any tier of orbital within the squad, or is there a point when it switches from a personal orbital to a squad orbital?
No, it's squad only, and even the solo ones are squad only. So people will have to squad up, and we'll try to teach people to do that. That's it's both a hindrance and a good thing. I want people to squad up, but I also don't want solo players that don't know about it to lose out. So we'll have to try to pop that up into some of our internal messaging.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. A lot of times when I would run solo, I would basically start a squad with just myself in it and lock it, because it was pretty routine for me to pull a solo war barge during the given point of a match. So that's one of the things that you'd have to educate folks on, is like the mechanics of being able to even access the war barge strike. But again, I think it's a pretty interesting dynamic of adding sort of that tiered battlefield effects that you can bring into the game. So it's a good tactical decision of, do you choose the more targeted, less lethal strike that may be great right now to get that rooftop camper out of your way, or do you really want to save it up for like a lethal strike to clear an objective, those kind of things. So I like I said, I like it. I think it does two things for you. Just like you said, it gives probably less experienced players access to that style of mechanic, because I think everybody remembers like the first time you ever drop a war barge strike. It's pretty cool. And then the next thing you do is it really does add some tactical depth to the game. So that's actually pretty cool. Now I think you have a couple other things coming out in this one. Are you guys looking at updating the scanning system in this patch?
Yep, absolutely. Can I ask why you locked the squad?
Well, yes, sure. It kind of depends. Like if I like sometimes I would do it for a personal challenge. Like I wanted to know if I could drop the war barge by myself. That was one reason. And other reasons, frankly, it was generally because I was busy or I wasn't going to be able to be on comms. So if I start a squad and I'm the squad leader, but I can't talk for like real life reasons, like my kid's around or something like that, I don't really think that's fair to the squad, if that makes sense. So sometimes I'll do that.
Yeah, I just let people hang on to me if they want, so at least they know there's a squad out there if they want. But yeah, it's
Yeah, that's no problem.
yeah. On scanning, yes, absolutely. So this is probably the most heated topic. Do you want to do that or bandwidth first?
Yeah, let's go ahead and touch on the scanning piece.
They're contenders for the same crown.
No, honestly, I don't think you're going to find a lot of contention. I think a lot of people there's it's very hard to convey context when you deal with the forum crowd, of which all of us in the discussion today are part of that. But let's talk about scanning first, because that is definitely a clear change to what folks in Dust call E-War. Now, if you play Eve, that's not exactly E-War. There's a lot of other components of E-War that are in Eve that aren't really replicated in Dust. But it's basically always been a war between scanning and dampening and the different suit types based on what you are. So, and I think what it looks like you're doing is basically adding some depth to the actual mechanics of scanning to a degree as best you can. And it looks like there's actually some role changes. And if you could get into that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah. The old system. So the new system. Let's start with that. Is the three concentric circles of scan fall off. Call that, with the best precision or the lowest closest to you, and the worst.
Oh, you still on?
Am I bringing up? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit.
Okay, I'll try to be close to the mic. So the old system was two binary, and a dynamic system where you kind of you have infinite circles of is to, let's say, computationally intensive on the server. So we went with three, and it's something that we actually didn't think was possible before we tried it, and then it became apparent that it was quite possible and not even that difficult to program. So we just jumped on it because I wanted to fix the binary system. Now, we can't have just one type of person who can scan all these things and one type of role that can circumvent it, and everyone else is just left out. So there's a few things that are difficult, and what I'm seeing is that when everyone hates the system or likes the system equally, then I've done something wrong. Right. So scouts were crazy and assaults or mediums. So something was probably done that's gonna mess up their game, and we'll see how it kind of washes out. The main thing is that we wanted all players, to be able to lock out a dampened role. Let's just, instead of just saying scouts, instead of saying dampened roles, I'll just say scouts. Everyone wanted to lock out scouts from backstabbing you or shotgunning you in the back.
Sure.
And I think that's a fair, given that we have E-War, I think that's a fair kind of proposal. I think since we have E-War and we have these mechanics, everyone should be able to kind of see something. Most games don't have E-War, and I get shotgunned in the back in most games, and I don't cry about it. But since we have it, let's utilize it and let players fit into that if they want to. Heavies, mediums, let them take part. So we the closest circle, the short circle, we kind of give it a strong boost of plus or minus 50% to the precision, making it possible to scan dampened or double damped scouts at I think two precision modules, which is try to fit it into one module against another module is kind of locks each other out. So he needs the third to lock out the two precision models. So that's basically giving them a fighting chance. However, we didn't want to break the design that we had, which was scouts are the E-War specialists. and they are supposed to be able to dampen under almost everything. And if they dedicate themselves to the role, so Galente scouts will still be able to, if they fully dampen, and I can't remember exactly if all of the scouts can break all of the scans if they are fully damped and cloaked, but that was kind of, we'll see where it washes out. We'll see where the meta goes, because the short range is tiny, and it is actually just 6 meters, and you can grow it or kind of increase it with your passive skills, which is good. A hefty 50% growth there, but 50% of a small number is a small number, so it's still a couple of meters. And if you put on one amplifier as well, it's up to 10, maybe 12 meters if you calculate it.
Okay.
And that gives the scout, definitely, let's say a scout is dampening to break most scans. It gives him that, he has to cross a potential line of fire from 0 to 8 meters on the average, maybe. And I think that's a fair game. I never liked the fact that you could basically idle behind someone at 0 meter proximity. It's just silly. You should see him. There's everyone has tactical awareness of just like looking around without looking around. So I felt that was really gimmicky. I like people to have a tiny, strong circle, and I think most people wanted it. And I think that's what the majority of players wanted, was not to be able to be killed so easily by scouts. If you jump from scouts to, or kind of that circle, we can definitely take into account that by the long circle is now way kind of less powerful than the old passive scan. So we have a stronger, the same, and worse. So in effect, we have nerfed scanning overall, definitely. And I think we all agree that the passive scans, the wall hacks that everyone complained about, were too far-reaching, and they needed to be taken down. So the medium is now the old, basically, and the long range is kind of a nice awareness circle. It's going to catch undamped people, but not really gonna save anyone. You're going to catch sentinels. You're going to catch the heavy frames easy. You're going to catch lazy or undamped medium assaults, but you're not going to catch much else than that. But I think it's still awareness.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair way that you're looking at it, and the fact that you're trying to establish, I understand that there's some technical challenges with having like a true fall off, but I think the way that you're doing with the concentric rings idea, it will add a lot to the gameplay. So I do think that's good, and you're making an interesting shift in the meta where the scouts effectively retain sort of their supremacy in damps specifically, but you're opening up the scanning component to other classes. So I think that is actually a very positive move. I'm just curious, anybody else have any thoughts on this in the room?
Well, I think it's definitely going to be a great system. Rattati's pretty much said everything that needs to be said about the way the community feels about how scouts have been able to sort of just come up out of nowhere and troll us just by, shotgunning us in the back or Nova knifing us in the back with really no sense of urgency. The thing I like about this new system is they actually have to rely on some of their other characteristics, speed and agility, to actually finish the deal, to get the kill. So, it's going to be less trolly, and it's going to rely on them to actually, use their attributes and use their skills as a player to, actually kill the prey that they're hunting, instead of being able to just sort of casually walk up behind us and ruin our day. So I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, and the directional arrows are going to be also, that is probably kind of a bigger change to scouts.
I would agree. Yeah. I think that's, a lot of people don't realize how useful those directional carrots are on your overhead, as opposed to just seeing the red dot. The other interesting thing is that that's going to make some of the active scanners much more popular, the ones that have sort of the longer show time for your squad.
Yep, which is exactly what I want. I don't want the only scouting mechanic to be a Kaldari scout in a hole somewhere. And that's definitely something we want. We also wanted loggies to have a chance at being a passive scanner.
Sure.
They're not going to be as powerful as the MR scout. I think they can go down to a similar level of scanning. However, if they dedicate every single thing that they have, but they're going to be it's not going to be a walk in the park to survive in that loggy, as well as he's not going to have the native skills that the scout does have. So the scout is definitely still a big player in the scouting game, in the scanning game, but loggies can be a part of it, and that's what I want. I want everyone to be possible for them to be a part, not just like you're an idiot loggy, you're never going to play PC.
Yeah, I think your approach. I know it's challenging to a lot of people, like any change is, and that's okay. But I think you hit it on something that I had not considered. I sort of paid attention to the scanning, like the scanning thread. I was tracking that it was a feature in the upcoming patch, but the way you describe it, which is basically how do you create the system, or how do you adjust the system so that everybody can, to some degree, at least compete in it. And that's probably one of the few things we have in Dust where really nobody else could compete other than the scouts. So I do think that that's actually a pretty solid change overall for the game. And I do applaud you for making it. I know it's one of those things where, and there's change everywhere that we look at that is either sometimes hard to understand, frankly, or you may not agree with, or you may agree with wholly and other people don't. But it's one of those things where I think it's taking a bold step in terms of how you shape the mechanics of the game. One of the other things that you've been doing also is the bandwidth change, which also affects the Logi class. And it's kind of interesting that you've got like in any other release, I think either bandwidth or the scanning change would be a fairly major deal, but you're putting both in one, which means it's a pretty significant drop in terms of a change or an adjustment to probably how the game's going to be played. So now the bandwidth concept has been kicking around for a long time, but that's one of those things that I think you just felt the time was right, and then you were able to apply the technical measures to do it. And if you could kind of segue a little bit into that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I was confident that they wouldn't overlap in gameplay, even though they're big changes. So I felt fine in combining them. They don't overlap in any specific gameplay way. Like nerfing a tank and boosting AV. It's not that kind of thing. It's just two separate features that we wanted to fix. Both of these actually were things that I had thought about for a long time. And when I asked the question, can this be done? Well, do we want to do this? Yes. Can it be done? Yes. Let's just do it, and we'll tweak it. And I think the community feedback before both of these was incredibly useful, because I would have put something, to the best of my ability, and maybe probably talking to the CPM, but honing this with 25 or 30 pages of discussion was very useful, even if everyone who partook in the conversation didn't get what they wanted, specifically on the scanning profile. So the scouts say, I listened to mediums, and the barbershop was in flames. And the same thing happened with mediums, where I obviously listened to everything the barbershop said and fixed that. So
Oh, come on. Everybody knows that you're secretly a member of the barbershop, and you've got like a little ring. You got a secret handshake. We know all that. Yeah, come on, man.
It's just funny because I tracked it before in the Eve forums, before I started doing any Dust, or before we started doing Dust, was that if you'd run two separate threads on the Eve forums, a Kaldari buff and a Mar buff, you'd basically get the end result of both threads would be CCP hates our race and loves the other race. So
that's a fair point.
There's no black and white in this, only gray. So bandwidth, we talked about it for years, actually literally years, and we, again, thought it was more difficult to implement. It wasn't. It just took a little time authoring all these kind of attributes and making sure that they all carry through in the right places. But in the end, we got a great result, I think, especially with, well, let's step one way back, the bandwidth, explain the bandwidth. Everyone gets a bandwidth that they can basically play with or utilize. All equipment or all deployable equipment utilizes that bandwidth. And if you use more of that bandwidth then you go over your bandwidth, you start destroying the old deployables. It's called FIFO, first one in, first one out in logistics.
Okay.
And
Disappeared again.
The button.
roles.
Yep.
Definitely. I want there to be a demand for a login in a team. That's what I want. I want it to be a pull relationship with the team, not a kind of push. So everyone should have a login and everyone should use login, and many people should play logins, proper logins. And I think we honed the system. I went out with a simple system, and people gave me feedback, and you know, we cut remotes down to 3 using 3 bandwidth, and even increased the scout bandwidth from 246 or 468 to actually 6912 to make sure that they, you know, could keep 2 or 3 remotes, which is a kind of essential gameplay for scouts. And we also went down to 2 for proximity mines. We also want to boost those for buff in a later patch, but they're not really good enough. So I think we listened to everyone. I think the end result is fair. If you accept that bandwidth is going to be a feature, if you don't, nothing's fair. But I think we ended up with a really good result.
You know, I actually have a couple of quick questions for you. So it looked basically like you picked a base value of 4 for all equipment, then you adjusted north or south of that based on the type of equipment or what you wanted to achieve with the equipment. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. At 4, it could have been, you know, 2 when we're in decimals, or 6, or, you know, 4
Sure.
is a nice number.
I like
divisible.
Yeah, I like the system. I thought it was good, but I did have one quick question for you. So I saw the run of numbers that came out, and having the equipment having different. There's kind of a 2-part question. So part 1, understanding that the base value of equipment is 4, and then some are a little bit north of that, and some are a little bit south. What struck me was that you definitely increased the bandwidth on things like triage hives, like Alitex or Waracomis, things like that, to 6, which was interesting. But what I've generally heard the most people complain or get concerned about is uplinks, which remained at a 4. And I've kind of joked about it, but you're kind of like opening a black hole up, that's what the description is, to, you know, to spawn people. Wouldn't that have like a higher bandwidth?
Sure. And we should definitely take a look at, you know, the better hives, the better links actually. I actually think we need to overall, and this maybe not, I've never told anyone this, but we need to nerf uplinks a little bbit. I think they carry too much, they have too many charges, and they have too many spawns on each uplink. So I was going to tackle it that way instead.
Okay. No, I think that's something that a lot of us had talked about. And I mean, I've even mentioned that if that was a driving factor for if uplinks were being spammed too much, almost treat it like how the grenades were treated, where you lower sort of the carried or the deployable amount, something like that. But
breaking up to me, I can't really hear anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying that would be a similar take on how we treated the grenades, where you lowered, I think, the carried amount of the grenades. Is that about right?
Yes. Maybe we punished grenades a little bit for some past discussions, but that's something we can fix. But yes, uplinks are just are very good now, and it's a lot of spamming going on. But I thought let's just go through this pass and see what happens. The triages were definitely, you jump into a loggy, throw out your triages, and then go back into Sentinel, and you're set for life. That's not something I want. And also that, whatever you call it, roach hole or something in the Galente research facility, where that supply depot room is just filled with triages. I'm fine with making that more difficult.
Well, this is something that again, it's one of those where you know, had somebody asked like, hey, how do we cut down equipment span, but nobody brought up the word bandwidth. I think one of the first things a lot of guys that run dedicated Logi would have said is, can you put a buffer around supply depots where you can't have active equipment? Because that's really where you see a lot of kind of like garbage hives and garbage uplinks that are probably eating up game performance. The Galente Research Facility is a great example of that.
Yeah, I actually don't know that we have that ability, but we do have that ability for the RDVs to not be able to land somewhere. So the system obviously has some kind of a placement logic that we might be able to use. So just put that on the Trello.
Yeah, no, I can totally understand that. Now, I guess, and sort of this is the, sort of my rounding out question on bandwidth, which, by the way, for the record, I will not shy away from the fact that I had much hate and invective towards the bandwidth idea. I'm not generally a fan of it. However, I know it's going to be a feature. So what my focus is, and what I tell a lot of people that kind of get ragey about game mechanics is you get a fair shot to say your piece on something, but when the decision's made, it's either going to be in the game or some form of it's going to be in the game. Then if you're that passionate about it, then what you really need to do is figure out, how do you optimize that feature? How do you make that feature the best? And that's why I'm much more interested about things like the bandwidth numbers, and not is it going to be a thing. I think that's decided, and I'm okay with that. But one of the things that I am a little bit concerned about, and it's not necessarily just about bandwidth, but when you get into something where the tiering is so sharp, like in Logis with the number of equipment slots, equipment carried, and now bandwidth, it really kind of drives you into the proto or go home sort of model of play. Do you think that's maybe a concern?
I definitely thought about it a lot. The tiering just happens naturally with the slots. So nothing is gained and nothing is lost, because you won't have access to the higher bandwidth using uplinks anyway. So I went through it, and at Proto, you have these uplinks that have 2 spawns, or you can fit more uplinks. But I don't think that. I think it's all based on deployables, and that the deployables number goes straight back to the combination of Proto and the slots that you already have. So it does not add on to tiering, in my opinion. But if someone shows me the actual math to demonstrate that, I'm happy to look at it. Second, I think we still have the idea from Cross and more or other logistics was to have a way more carried, less active idea, which I've explored properly. It can definitely exist within the bandwidth idea as well. So that's what we want to explore. But I don't think the tiering it doesn't add on to the progression problem or the go pro or go home.
No, I can see from a mathematical standpoint where you're coming from. What I'm kind of going for is the will players feel that it's worth it to run something less than Proto? Not the raw performance does, I think, scale well. I think it's one of those in terms of a matter of player feel, but it's a real dangerous thing when you start talking about power creep and all that kind of good stuff. But it's one of those where the Logis, just because they're all about how much and how many different types of equipment you carry and how much you can put down. That's really where it kind of got my head thinking about it. But I think you're spot on in your analysis about the raw numbers.
Actually, you said that bandwidth was decided, and I actually prefer to think of it that it kind of was apparent that it was wanted by the community in that feedback thread. If everyone had been like, no, that's the worst system ever, I would have pulled it. I can guarantee that. We did not program a bit into it until I had started that feedback thread.
No, I think that's a fair statement. And one thing I would also add is anytime that you deal with like a I don't know, for lack of a better term, like a subset of the community, like when you're dealing with the scouts or the lodges or this, well, I would tell you that it was probably the majority of lodges like the bandwidth idea, but there was a pretty sizable minority that don't like it. and I saw a lot of people commenting on it that were kind of what I joke around. I call them the one suit wonders, guys that would put on like a Logi suit like once or twice, like usually at the beginning of a match, throw a bunch of uplinks down and that kind of stuff. So it doesn't affect their play that much. So I think some of the passion that you heard from you probably from guys like me or Operator or Nextark, things like that, that's not unlike what you get from the barbershop. Hopefully not quite as ragey and bitter and sort of poisonous, but just throwing that out there. I think it was more along the lines because we actually do try to stay in the Logi suits as much as possible. The only beef I had with it was, and it's really about how you look at Dust. And from the time I started playing Dust, I always thought that the flexibility that you had in match was unparalleled in any game. Like you could do or be anything in that fight that you needed to be if you had the appropriate skills laid on. And I viewed it not so much in the terms of the Logis, but it really took away some tactical flexibility. Now, that's a perspective that I would have, and I think it's a perspective that some Logis have. But I do see exactly what you're saying. There's a lot of people that did like the idea. And like I said, right, wrong, or indifferent, I think it's one of those things that it's going to be in the game, so we do need to try to figure out how to help you supply like real-time data and information. And kind of the intangibles, like how does this really feel when you're playing? Like what is it? Are you able to do your job better, more, worse, the same, or just in a different way? And I think the player base owes you that.
I hope we can avoid some terrible mishaps, but we can definitely tweak also in a hotfix.
Oh no, you're going to drop something in the pot at some point. You're going to have a grease fire, I guarantee you.
Another thing on the tiering, if you wanted to base it on, like, let's say a fixed number, then who are you punishing or who are you affecting? So if you have the fixed number, let's say the same as the standard or the advanced, then the standard can spam more than they should, and the prototype can't put out their equipment in relation to their slots. So that's okay. Just on that too. So all right, that's probably bandwidth.
Yeah. I think you've got it covered, brother. So is there anything like this that you really want players to know about patch 1.10? Is there anything else out there that you really want to make sure that we're tracking?
Let me pull up the patch notes real quick.
Cool. So while we're waiting, real quick, there's sitting here writing up a list of different things I'd want to ask you, and I'm scratching out most of them. But I think hearing your thoughts on how you approach things like bandwidth and scanning, honestly, is a pretty cool thing for me to hear, and I know it's probably going to be a pretty cool thing for a lot of the listeners to hear because it's really hard to have a dialogue over the forums. So generally, what we see is you like with these really well laid out spreadsheets and posts that drop onto the forums, and then we all bum rush that thing, and then you'll occasionally have to come back with these snippets because you're trying to saturate people with you're being saturated with information, and you're trying to reply to us all. So this is actually pretty good to actually hear your thought process on this. So I did want to kind of mention that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a full-time job to actually do this properly. I'll tell you that.
Who would have thought it?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Whilst you're looking up, you mind if I throw a couple more questions at you while you're messing around with the patch notes?
Oh, shoot. I'm
okay.
Ready.
Awesome. So, in case you've noticed, we've got a guy by the name of Sir Manboy, who you may or may not be familiar with. I hear he's on the CPM. Doesn't talk much. Kind of a quiet guy. But he's in the room with us, and I would be remiss if I did not ask this question. What are your thoughts on having team deploy in faction warfare?
Is it me or?
Oh yeah, no, that's you. That's all you, baby. I'm pretty sure I know what SMB's thoughts are. That's why I was asking you what yours are.
My thoughts on team deploy. That I've never heard that question before, ever in Skype. It's definitely something I've also, played with a different option that he has not liked at all, and speaks probably on behalf of a lot of players. My original kind of thought was to reduce squads from 6 to 4 and allow people to combine 2 4-man squads into 8-man squads or platoons, 12 or 16, and then team deploy them into faction warfare. That's what we've been talking about. There's no secret in that. Adamantly opposed is the 4 going for 6 to 4. So we're kind of duking that out before we go to the forums. But the platoon option is something that I'm really interested in, and as a part of a bigger kind of faction warfare package, it's on the roadmap, I believe, or if it's not, then I'm going to put it on the backlog. Is a kind of a polished pass on faction warfare from a featured standpoint, not just the loyalty store, which would be trying to figure out a team deploy system where you can queue up with multiple squads in a platoon, and also having a kind of permanent sign up with a faction that you can't get out as easily. SMB and Cross already have a kind of well thought out design that they've been creating, I think, with their kind of, what do you call it, their back rooms. But that's the kind of what's on the list for faction warfare. But for me, and I've told them that very directly, is that Planetary Conquest is the marquee feature of Dust 5 and 4 as I see it, and I've always seen it as the primary strength of the game itself. There's no other game that allows persistent ownership of districts or planets or anything like that in any other FPS. Certainly not in a free-to-play game. So we are definitely going to work on Planetary Conquest, and faction warfare comes in second to Planetary Conquest. But if we can do smart things with faction warfare, we'll definitely try to do that.
I've got to ask you, because you kind of laid something out there that's, and this is pretty apropos of why it's good to have these conversations. I think that's the first that I've heard somebody say that, at least in that way. Or at least clearly in the last several months, that PC is still king, because I think if you ask the player base right now, most of them would tell you that not much going on in PC. So I guess my question is, here's the thing. It strikes me that based on what we've heard from CCP routinely is that, there's a fairly finite amount of resources, being time, effort, all that kind of stuff that you can apply to Dust, which I don't think that's any secret. But it strikes me that faction warfare is something that would be easier to iterate on and achieve a lot of the things that you want, versus PC that would require, I think, much more dramatic changes to make it A, worthwhile, and B, accessible to enough of the player base. Would you say that's a fair comment?
Not actually sure about the technical aspect. Faction warfare is not much played, and people probably know that. It's played by a kind of a hardcore dedicated elite that is not much bigger than Planetary Conquest, actually. And that's why you see few matches. That's why you have long waiting times. And fixing loyalty store offerings is not going to make people take that jump.
But if you could deploy as a team, that's still better than waiting 24 hours for a timer at 2 o'clock in the morning to play a single match, right?
Which is definitely why we also want to fix that. So Planetary Conquest should be, for me, that's where corporations should be accessible to all corporations. I said that in a thread somewhere.
Okay.
That's where I want all corporations to end up. I really do. I really want them. So we are talking about smaller districts that only need 8v8 or 12v12 battles instead of 16v16. Difficult to bring up sometimes. We are thinking about battle rewards, different battle rewards. We're thinking about a lot of things, and you can see the roadmap has 3 epics or epics for all releases for Planetary Conquest. We want to fix it and make it fun, and we want to make it rewarding. Faction warfare is something that, if you, and I'm not saying we're going to, but they are competing for a similar crowd. And if you want to fix one and you can't fix both, then I'll tell you, I'm going to fix Planetary Conquest. If I can fix faction warfare on the way, I'll definitely try to do that. But for me, that's not how the roadmap is.
So now I've got to ask, because this is Again, we could do a whole show on PC, and we've done that, but it's just I think my fear is as long as that there's any way, shape, or form that 20 people can control 50% of your star map, I think you're going to have a hard time with PC. I would say that after you've clearly been messing around with Dust 514 longer than any of us, but I think most of us in the room have probably been here for going on 2 years, a little more than 2 years, and that has always been the marquee problem with PC is that the bottleneck of players because of the way the mechanics are, that can control that system.
Yep, which is exactly. It's good that we know the problems.
Yep. No, I think that's fair. Okay. I do. I know we're kind of running short on time with you, but I had a couple questions, or really just kind of. I wanted to highlight a couple things. You've mentioned the term roadmap, which, by the way, you guys have actually put a roadmap up on the web. You've got a Trello board, which I had never heard of that before in my life, by the way. It's really cool. That you allow players access to view your roadmap and to basically add very direct, very pithy comments about things for consideration to add to components of the roadmap, I guess is the way to describe it. I thought that was a great move, by the way. And it's one of the things that I think is a huge communication step forward. Because to be frank, CCP is not. They generally have a great relationship with their player base in terms of communication, but I think it is a fair assessment as a player that there's no secret there's been some real challenges with communication from CCP Shanghai about the kind of the future of the game. Going back to FanFest, that's not a shocker. But I think you guys are taking a huge step forward with the Trello board and the way that you are describing sort of like the next 2 to 3 months, which I think is about how far that roadmap went out. If you could talk a little bit about the Trello board and what you want to get out of it, or what are the kind of things that are useful to you to see on that sort of interactive kind of workflow board, I think that would kind of help folks. It would focus them and maybe bring some attention where they could assist you in the team.
Yep. So we definitely with Eve, even CCP has in the old days, I think the community, let's say, not controlled, but contributed more directly to development, like in the very early days, where the devs were basically coding next to the handful of players who were playing in the real early days. And we talked a lot to the community, but I don't think we've ever really shared a lot of information like this before. And in my opinion, we've basically we had the lead at some point, then we lost the lead, and then we're basically being dragged under in the past, like, let's say, year or so. Not all of that has been kind of due to the kind of lack of effort for development or anything like that. It's just that times are changing. There's a lot of things going on in the company for a long time, and we've basically been trying to figure all these things out. World of Darkness, etc. And we had to deal with some things. And I think now we're in a little bit of a clear. And this is something that I always wanted to do before I even joined or took over Dust. Is why aren't we doing this? Like we have a huge community that can basically give us not only feedback, which is kind of iterative to the designs that we have, but also better ideas than we have, because 100,000 minds are better than 3, even if they have the toolbox or the kind of design to work within. So this is what I've been working on for a long time, and in effect we've had this Trello board since I took over. It's just my Trello board, and when I read the forums, I pick out smart ideas or thoughts or whatever. I have my Trello board that is probably like 1,000 cards on it, and I intend to show that and share that with you guys, read only at some point when I've cleaned it up a little bit, because it was not necessarily kind of very PC. Maybe I say that how that little shit Pokey had some like bad.
We say that all the time.
It's
okay.
true. It's very abusive, so I'm used to it.
So I'm going to clean it up so people can see what I already have, and they can compare notes with the community Trello, and kind of say, okay, and basically I want to kind of graduate ideas from the community Trello to my Trello, which is basically then the backlog of ideas. Then when we settle on the roadmap and epic that a couple of ideas can fit into, then we start pulling from that. And if we have the votes enabled, we'll at least be able to see what's the community thinking, what do they want, what's the most popular. We won't. It's not a competition. It's not. I'm not, and I don't hesitate to say it. I'm never going to pick something that's popular that we don't like or doesn't fit. But it's really good to have that. And I've taken direct feedback and put it in as per the cloak scanning mechanism. It's just basically straight from the barbershop, which is a nerf from the barbershop. So it was a nice idea. I thought about it and said, damn, that is elegant and smart, and I'll just use it. And that's how things can happen. But that's how the community Trello is going to work. People are going to be there. I hope they're going to behave. Don't want to have to close it and clean up some things that someone kind of raged on about and created or deleted cards or something. But because this is you need to manage yourself a little bit in that area. Because I can't run both of them. So don't turn it into a forum or a shouting match. But right now it's working very well. Ideas are kind of racking up. People are sorting them and voting on them and discussing them and moving discussions to threads on the forum. So it's working out very well right now.
Yeah.
And
one of the things
it's just great.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's just great. And what I wanted to say about CCP is we weren't in the forefront anymore. New Kickstarters, community developed things, Daisy, Rust, all these things, they already had it. Rust has its own kind of, I think maybe not Trello, but some kind of interactive page where players could, tie in and communicate. And we just want to kind of run with the herd. We have to be competitive on that as well. And it fits our new kind of style here in Shanghai. Rouge is on he's all about the community development. He loves, Daisy is probably his favorite game of all time, I'd guess. A lot of us played Rust, and that's how we want to do. We want kind of low overhead community feedback, so we know the game is good and what the community wants. We can't make it around like a small elite cadre of people who are gonna make a game that caters just to them. But it is great to have that community and the goodwill that comes with it. The roadmap itself, I think, is the first for CCP. I'm going to guess.
It is. I actually did some research on this. So I've even talked to a couple of the CSM members about this. So normally what they see with a roadmap is a wall that is either A, blank, or B, filled with Post-it notes with a lot of hastily scratched multicolored pens. So I would give you 2 big thumbs up on this one.
This is a cleaned up Post-it. No, actually, I don't use the Post-it things. It's an agile thing where you have loads of people coming in and moving things up and down for days, and then someone's supposed to take pictures of it and translate it. Don't think that ever happens. The wall is just there, and people go to it and pick up ideas or remember what they're supposed to do.
I think it's a great idea, man. And I'll tell you straight up, when I saw that you had War Barge rating on there, I was like, oh, that's genius. That's something that now I will go off on 2 things. One, that's a huge positive because that's something I've always wanted is let me attack something, have a map in space on a station or a ship or something. And I think if you look at the map feedback part of the forum, there's quite a few locations there. But I would just offer this. I'm incredibly excited about the roadmap that you guys have laid out, but the one thing in the back of my mind is that we've seen a lot of these things before, and they didn't materialize very well, or there was a lot of drama in between there. So I'm personally rooting for you guys to really make a heavy go of this and really pick off a lot of the a lot of the targets that you're setting for yourself publicly. I am very much on board with that. But like I said, I would be remiss if I didn't capture that probably from the community, that there's a lot of great stuff that is in the potential there, but it's, particularly for the veterans, they're a little bit cautious about it. So I appreciate you putting it out there. So real quick, what I'd like to do is, I don't know if Rattati is trying to talk and he doesn't have his button down or not, but just open it up very quickly to our folks, which basically everybody but Pokey is on the CPM, so that's why everybody's stone silent probably. But if there's any kind of questions or comments, real quick, last parting shots for CCP Rattati.
If anything, just bravo on coming to talk with us and be literally vocal with the community. I think that people seeing that the development team is actually talking with players and being public in a media that's not just forum posts and whatnot, I think is really good. So this is definitely a good direction that you guys are going with the roadmap and being more public, and I think that people are going to react extremely well to it. So for that, I thank you. It's really good to see.
Awesome.
Hello, I just got disconnected.
So Pokey had an incredibly eloquent statement about his discontent and his concerns with your personal style on the forums. And I was wondering if you...
Nice. I love how snarky he is in the forums. Don't tell him to change.
Yeah, I don't know where I got cut off, but yes, some reservations, yeah, about the 3-month roadmap that we've promised before, and yes, it's not 10 years anymore; it's 3 years, 3 months. So we'll take it a little bit slower, and I think from definitely these things are possible that we're putting up there. None of this is kind of pie in the sky stuff. We've learned a little bit of lesson on that. You probably see that not a lot of Eve link connections also. Those have made our kind of life more complex. So we are going to fix Dust without. We're going to talk to Eve later when we fixed our shit.
You, sir, are a gentleman and a scholar. That's what I like to hear. And here's the thing. A lot of folks that, to make no bones about it, there's a lot of first-person shooters out there, but the thing that is uniquely different, or at least in the potential for Dust, is that its linkage to Eve. And I don't want to belittle the fact that I think one of the things that drew a lot of people to Dust is the ability to play in New Eden writ large, but doing it through a different mechanic, a first-person shooter platform versus sort of a space naval combat game. But it was that overall attachment to the meta, and then having a sense of being part of something much larger than you, the individual player, which almost kind of what you're talking about in PC. But I do like the fact that you haven't taken that off the table. That let's make sure that we have a very quality sort of product in a solid player community, and then perhaps reach back out to the New Eden world in the form of an Eve linkage. Is that a fair statement to say? Like, down the road, if things continue to progress positively.
I'm gonna guess he got disconnected again.
Oh, jeez.
No, I can still see him. He's there. He's probably trying to figure out which button to push to talk. Oh no, he's
we
he's
did
there.
lose him. He's here back. Okay.
Okay, something's wrong. I see my internet break basically just shuts off and down. I don't know what's happening.
All right. Well, we
firewall.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and we can go ahead and kind of call it, because I know you got to get back to doing some work stuff.
If you want clarifications on anything on roadmap, I'm happy to spend 3 minutes before we go to lunch.
Well, I'll tell you what. How about this? We'll take what we've got right now, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions from the listeners, and you'll probably see some stuff posted on the forums. That's fine. But what maybe we could do is, in a few weeks, like 3 or 4 weeks, we can maybe bring you back, and we could have a discussion that's more focused on kind of what you see in the next 2 to 3 months. And that would probably answer a lot of our listeners' questions. And other than that, I think we can do a quick round of shout outs and probably let you get going on your way. How's that sound?
Absolutely fine.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. Iron Wolf Saber?
This is Iron Wolf Saber, and I'd like to give a shout out to everyone who's been giving feedback to the design document I've been throwing together. I know I haven't gotten through all the comments yet, but there's still so much more to do, so keep them coming.
Good deal. Pokey.
Special shout out to Rattati. I know you missed what I said earlier, but just I really appreciate, and I'm sure the community appreciates you being more vocal and coming on a show like this to actually speak with people directly on a format that's other than the forum. So real props to you. I think it's a good direction that the development team is going, and I think it's going to work out really well for everyone.
Okay. SMB.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to all my boys and gals over at Molon Labe. And I just want to say that I think it's awesome that we're having conversations like the one we're having tonight, and that the game is in such a positive place. Looking back just a couple of months, who would have thought that we would be talking about, these new builds and the future of the game in the way that we are. So I think it's a really exciting time to play Dust, and I couldn't be more thrilled to be on the CPM and working with Rattati and, all the other guys at CCP. I think it's awesome.
Yep. And Soraya.
Yeah, I'm gonna give two shout outs. One I'm gonna give to actually Kane Sparrow, who I've been doing Fact War Syncs with this week. And that's been a lot of fun, though. He's been making me fight for the evil Lamar. And my other shout out is, of course, to CCP Rattati for making our show awesome with the dev.
Wait a minute. Our show's awesome anyway. What the hell? Okay.
More awesome.
Okay, that's fair. I can work with that. All right. So a couple shout outs this week. I will give CCP a shout out because he's a cool dude, not because he has to come here and make the show better. How about that? But he's still a cool dude. But seriously, I would like to give a quick shout out to some of the guys on Agony Unleashed. They run a PvP class for newer guys on the east side, and they're willing to take on a bunch of dusters. And I'll tell you right now, I will sponsor the kind of the fees because you do have to pay them. I will sponsor the first 10 dust mercs that call me or shoot me a note on my either my in-game client or Twitter. I'll make a little list, and I will pay your entrance fees into our PvP basic class if you're interested in playing Eve. So that's an open shot to anybody in Dust. So it's really better for the new bros if you're interested in going out and dropping orbitals for people and you want to kind of know how to survive a little bit. They run PvP basic classes about once a month-ish. And CCP Rattati, because I know that people have challenged you to play Eve a little bit. If you're interested, I will pay your entrance fee as well.
I've tried a couple of times. It's not a game for me.
And the last thing I'm going to say before I turn it over to CCP Rattati for kind of the last word shout outs is pirate drop suits. Okay, so CCP Rattati, any shout outs?
Yeah, I'm going to shout out to the team, the Dust team, and the Dust Live team, Team Storm Raiders, and Dust Respawn. Those guys are the strong silent type. They don't post a lot and they don't chat a lot, but they are here and they're listening, and they're hitting awesome velocity, and they keep hitting out the park. Let's hope 1.10 is as good as 1.9 was. And the CPM is my other. I don't want to fawn over them, but this is, I never worked with the CPM 0, but CPM 1 is just like, my right hand, definitely. So I talked to them on Skype, I talked to them on email, and they're all there with support and great feedback. And they are just true heroes of Dust. That's it.
All right. Hey, thanks, brother. And guys, we really appreciate everybody coming out for, or at least either dialing us up on the live. Oh, wait, we're not live streaming. That's twice now. Or hitting us up on iTunes for episode 32 of Biomassed with our special guest, CCP Rattati, who, for the record, we have invited, and he's at least made positive noises that he would be willing to come back at some point in the future at an undetermined time. But what we would like to do, in all seriousness, we would like to have you back on, maybe in a month or two, and have just like a much more informal conversation. Like maybe we can just kind of shoot the breeze a little bit about what you see going on in game, more as a player, not as a dev. And I think it'd be great to hear your perspective on how you see things in the game. when you're playing. 'Cause I know you're a big like Galente Assault guy, I believe. So should be a lot of fun, and we would love to have you on again. And we really appreciate you coming on and talking to all the Dust players. Thanks a lot.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Okay. And with that, guys, we're going to bring this episode to a close. Good night and good weekend and happy holidays.